Hey, this is Jennifer Vanderbeek from scrapsoflife.com, and today's video is all about the evolution of my DIY planner solution. So I have always been a fan of writing things down. I've always made lists. I've always been the type to, keep notes, post-it notes scattered everywhere, little pieces of paper, lots of notebooks. Basically, if I write something down, I'm a lot more likely to remember it and actually do it. And when it comes to ideas for projects, if I write it down, then I've taken the responsibility of remembering that project idea out of my head and put it into a notebook. That way I can find where it is when I'm ready to work on it. So I've always used some sort of notebook or planner in my day-to-day life. For a while I was just keeping a single notebook every year, and it would have everything from budgets, to-do lists, notes about projects, small journal entries, just very free form, and it worked. It worked for a while, but then I wanted to get a little bit more organized. So several years ago, I started using, I think it was a Mead planner just from like Office Depot or whatever, and it was a horizontal format. It was just very simple, 2 columns in each, kind of like, just normal notebook sized, and it worked okay. But I was doing the formatting within the planner, and so it wasn't ideal, but it worked. And then the next year when I went to get the new planner, they didn't make that style anymore. They changed them all, and I didn't like the style they had. So I went on a hunt, and this was 2012, and I know that because what I ended up getting after going from bookstore to bookstore to bookstore, trying to find a planner that would work for me, I had tiny little minor epiphany and remembered that one of the podcasters and bloggers I follow, Kimberly Wilson of Tranquility Du Jour, she is a big fan of the planner pads, or at least she was until she came out with her own planner. And so I said, hey, the planner pad, that might work. And so I ordered one. And this is my 2012 planner pad. I used it for 2012 and 2013. Obviously not this one, but I got another planner pad in 2013. And there were a lot of things I liked about the planner pad. Okay, so this is a March to April spread in my 2012 planner pad, and as you can see, I used a lot of this up here. I didn't use a lot of this down here. This was the appointment times, and but I liked the fact that it had, for instance, an expense column over here, and it had some top-level planning and then room for actual daily to-dos. And then it had some notes section over here. Basically, it was a really good system for me, but this was kind of big. This format is about like 9 by 12-ish. Not horrible, but it was very big, and I wanted to get smaller. So the next year I got one of their seasons. I got a smaller version of this, but it took out the expenses, and the format was a little bit different. And while it was okay, I was making it work for me. It really wasn't working as such. So in 2014, I decided to take what I loved about this planner and some other planner systems that I'd been incorporating into it and make my own. And so that's how I got here. This is a spread. This is actually from my 2015 planner because I used the same format for 2014 and 2015 for my personal planner, and you can see that I've got the top level planning here. I shrunk down the appointment section because I don't have a day that's scheduled around times as much as some folks, so I just didn't need it. So I left some space for to allow for planning timed things. In this particular week, there was actually a week-long summit online that I was following. But then I have my to-do lists in the five item format that I like to use, which is something I picked up from Charlie Gilkey of Productive Flourishing, one of his techniques, or part of one of his blog posts. And then I also have a section for what blog I'm writing during the day and the menu for the week, because those are important things for me to plan. And then I had an expenses section and some like scratch pad over here in the corner. This worked really great for a couple of years, but I love the vertical format. But what happened was this is actually a legal size sheet of paper, and finding good quality legal size paper usually requires ordering it online, which isn't horrible, but it's not ideal. And to change it meant I wasn't willing to change after the first year, because I liked this size and I could deal with it. But I did start offering it in an Etsy shop so that other people could use it, and there were a lot of questions about page size, and could I do it in 8.5 by 11, or 5.5 by 8.5 half page sizes. At the time I was like, I don't know. Here's what the spread looks like on its own. But this year, this year, I decided that, for 2016, I decided to explore the idea of what I could do about shrinking this down into an easier format for people to use. And so what I did was I took a 2-page spread and I made a photocopy of it, and I cut it up and I started moving things around. I tried to figure out how I could make all of this work, because what I was finding was that this top level planning was awesome. I didn't use it for like the planner pad did, where you put your things you need to accomplish by category, and then you filter them in through the to-dos during the week. I would put things that I was like larger projects that I was working on, things that I wanted to eventually get to. I concentrated on that that's why I called this big picture planning. And then dealt with my day-to-day to-dos and so on and so forth. But what I was finding was that the big picture didn't change from week to week, even though I had it on every week's page. And while I would revise it as I would copy it from one week to the next, I wasn't using it as much. So what I decided to do when I changed the format was, if I got rid of the big picture planning on top and put it on one day for a month, then that would potentially work a lot better. I would only have to write it down once a month. I could do my planning, the big picture planning for the month, and then I could use more space on the inside. So this is what the prototype for the 2016 Creative Days Planner looked like. I designed this in InDesign. So basically I went in and I dragged all the different blocks of, the to-do list, the different categories, the date, and I just dragged it into a new page size to see if I could work with this size. I even did it for the personal size, like the small file effects and stuff size, and it actually does work. It meant switching to a horizontal layout instead of a vertical, because the only way to keep it vertical and have it be even across the 2 pages would have required splitting Saturday and Sunday into halves. And I don't know about you, but my Saturdays are just as busy as any other day of the week. Same for Sundays. So I wanted to be able to keep full days for Saturday and Sunday. And it took me a little while to get used to this, but I did. And so then after playing with it for a few weeks, I started to refine it into what I've been using since October. Now, here's one of my October weeks. You see that, I added washi and stuff like that, because I love that there's a massive planner community all about decorating your planners. I adore that. I need my planner to be functional over fashionable first. So yeah, it's a little bit plain, the day-to-day, but it's not tough to dress it up, you know, to the extent that I want to. I like using the icon stickers to remind me of certain things, like when I, you know, when I have a full tank of gas, because I have to, you know, remind myself to get gas every 4 trips to work, or when I'm going to shop, or when I'm going to work on different things. I kept the expenses, but I found when I was using it the first month that I didn't need 2 full columns, or at least I didn't want to be shopping that much. And calling it expenses was a little bit much, so I switched it to shopping. And then I still have a notes section down here. I changed the fonts so that they're a little bit more elegant, a little bit more streamlined, whereas I've got a lot of script fonts, and my to-do list was done in this kind of like reverse stencil. I changed it to something simple like, you know, numbers inside of a circle. So it's really, you know, it makes it really easy to just check them off when you've done that task. Again, the big picture planning for my October, for instance, you know, this is so much more simple for me to work with, and I'm not mixing the day-to-day to-dos with the things I need to remember to get done for the month. And you can see I do check things off. The calendar is a straightforward calendar, but it's got plenty of space for me to put different deadlines and things like that. And at the beginning of each section, I do have a calendar, and I do have holidays and observances, you know, the main ones for that quarter. So yeah, I've kind of evolved, and I'm really liking the new format. And again, I'm using the Fodori fabric Fodori cover that I made in my last video on the planners, and it's working amazingly well. I love my little folders that I made to kind of go around the printed parts. I've got a plastic pocket here that I can put things in. I've got, you know, to-do lists and stuff attached to the outside. Same thing with the budgets. Now that's something else that, yeah, this is 2015, so there's nothing in this part, but that's something else that I did in my original planner was I used to keep my budgets in a separate notebook. And while that was great, it worked great, I thought, you know, if I could make a form that I can just fill out every month to remind myself that I'm, you know, making sure that I'm getting all the bills paid, well, then why not put that in my planner too? So I've got those for each month. For this, for my new thing, not only did, again, I shrunk it down and did a little bit of revising, but now I have, it's just a whole year called the Money Minder, and it is just it's an entire year, and it gets its own section of the planner pad, if it gets its own section of the Fodori, so that way when I'm swapping out my quarters for the monthly weekly, I'm not messing with the planner. And again, just another thing about the Fodori, I took the April Bowles-Olin Double Your Followers with Creative Marketing course through Creative Live, and she had this massive workbook as part of it, and I was able to print it out in, you know, 4 sheets to a page, 4 pages to a sheet, and fold it over. And then I didn't even bind it. I just slipped it inside one of these elastic bands, and it was great for keeping the course material right where I needed it. Again, so really loving the Fodori. So those are the decisions I made as far as what to include in my my weekly, monthly planner. The important things for me were to-do list, the having a space to put blog posts or menus, or both. Although when I did revise the planner in its final version, I took away the labels for the sections of lines that I use for my menu and blog, because that's what I use them for. It may not be what you or someone else uses them for, so it's a little bit more freeform. But I made sure I have my to-do list item, my numbered to-do list. I make sure that I have my my menu, my blog posts, a place to jot down expenses so that I'm keeping track of what I'm spending, some notes, and then I moved things to different places, and then I put each file together so that it's 3 months at a time. I do have it set up to where each quarter will print front and back on 8.5 by 11, meant so that you can fold it over and stitch along the back. You can use staples if you've got a long arm stapler, or what I use, and I'll pull out the most recent insert and show you. Oops, sorry, I'm working off camera. Is I used baker's twine. So tapestry needle and some baker's twine is, you know, all you need. And you need a hole punch of some sort. You can use a needle or something. This is a little tool. It's called, like, you know, a paper drill, a book drill. Basically, it's a little tiny drill bit on a handle that you can just kind of, you know, screw into the paper to make a hole. It works great. You can use an X-Acto knife, a craft knife, whatever you got. And I'm going to show you how I, you know, just very simply how to bind these. And then I also, one of the other things I did was I also rounded the corners. So, I mean, that's completely optional. It's just kind of a tactile thing. By all means, it is not a requirement, but I like it. And it also fits, since I was putting this with a Moleskine notebook in my planner, you know, I just thought, you know, it looks a little bit more consistent. So that's why I did it. But it's, you know, completely optional, of course. Again, if you fold the pages in half, just, you know, it's 5.5 by 8.5, nothing wrong with that. But if you want them to match the size of the Moleskine notebook and some of the other smaller inserts, then you're going to have to trim off a little bit. So you're going to want a craft knife and a good size ruler as well. Okay, so apparently the camera was off while I did those last steps. Sorry. So what I did was I folded each sheet and then collated them or nested them together. Then, when it was folded, I found the center of the spine. Then I made a mark, and I made a mark with a pencil. And then I made a mark about 1 inch from either end, and then found the center of those, eyeballing it as fine. Then, with the book block flat, I used a book drill to drill down in each of the marks, making a hole all the way through to the center. Okay. Then I took a length of baker's twine, about, you know, a little bit more than double the length of the book, or height of the book, put it on a tapestry needle, and then I'm going to start at the top. This is just very simple book binding. This is just a simple stitch. I'm going to take it all the way through to the center. You want to leave a little bit of a tail because you're going to tie it off later. And then we're just going to work our way down. And this tapestry needle is a little bit big, but it'll work. And we're just going to go in and out through our book block, through the spine. Oops. Come on. And now I haven't trimmed it yet because I want to do the binding first to make sure nothing shifts. Okay. There we go, all the way down. Okay. When we get to the end, we're going to go all the way back up, same way. Which is a little bit easier on the return trip because you've already widened the holes with the tapestry needle. A slightly smaller one would have worked better, but this was the one I had on hand, so that's what I used. And then, when we get up to the top, I have 2 tails. I am going to make a butcher's knot up at the top here, which is just 2 wraps around. And then I am going to seal it, or tie it off with another knot on top of that. So it's very sturdy, not going anywhere. And then I'm just going to trim off the edges. And there we have our finished book. Now, again, if you're wanting to match some existing products, or again, like I've said, I'm using a Moleskine. It needs a little bit of trimming. So you can see it needs like maybe an 1/8 of an inch off the top and bottom. And then on the edge, it's more like 3/8 or so. You can use a ruler, or if you've got an example of what you're wanting, then you can also just trace right around it and make your life easier. So I have some pencil guides to go for it. So I'm going to stand up to get some good leverage here. You can't see this, but I'm telling you. And I like to line it up with the grid on my cutting mat, just because it helps me keep my lines straight. And you're going to hold down firmly, and with a craft knife you're going to make lots of cuts. It's going to take several cuts to go through, but just apply, you know, easy pressure. And just keep your knife against the ruler as you cut down. Oops. And so there's the book. As you can see, it's just the same size as my Moleskine. Now, and again, this is personal preference, but I do like the way the rounded corners look. So I am going to go in. You can do a couple of sheets at a time depending on the thickness of your paper, and just round the corners. Yeah, it looks prettier that way. Personal preference. Okay, in my planner, now it's time for a new month, and so I am going to, thus begins kind of the plan with me portion of things. I have some washi tape. So I've been using my Halloween themed planner clips that I made as one of my Hellmar projects. You can find that on my blog, or on the Hellmar blog rather. So I'm going to take those off, and as you can see, for October I decided to, you know, stick with a single washi theme throughout the month, and I like the way it looks, and I also like that when the month is finished I can easily see which was which. So I'm going to do that again, and I do believe that I'm going to use Actually, I'm going to take this out because it's easier to work with outside of the planner, or the notebook rather. And I am going to use this pretty gold filigree. The light's hitting it wrong. Anyway, I'm going to use this kind of gold filigree pattern for my page edges, which actually works kind of nice because there's a nice central line. Alright, now the washi is about as much as I do in terms of planning ahead decorations. I might add decorations on any given week depending on what we're doing, but yeah, depending on what's going on. But I just like to go ahead and get the edges set up so that I don't really have to worry about it each week. I can just kind of jump in and do what I need to do. And last one. Okay. And that one was a little... Okay. And then finally, I think the last thing I'm going to do is add some of the skinny purple washi to the spine. Piece of washi, and I will write them on fun. Alright, and so that's about as much decorating as I do ahead of time. The rest is just done week by week. Since it's the beginning of the month, I will go back to my previous month's big picture planning, and I will transfer over anything that is still outstanding, things that are still on the board as far as ongoing projects. And then this can go back into, oh, I almost forgot something. Well, this can go back into my traveler style notebook. And one more thing is I need the new planner clips. So my November planner clips, I have this tea, I have the sunflower, and I have a maple leaf, and let's see, and then I have this little medallion, this little pretty piece of flair if I need it. But I think I'm going to use my sunflower to mark the big picture, my calendar, mark the beginning of each month. Oops. And then for my budget, I need to mark the November budget page so that I can flip to it easily. And I will use a little teacup or to-go cup of tea right there. And then for my current week, let's just go ahead and, well, let's go ahead and use the little medallion here. And what I do is each week when I swap the week, I clip the 2 weeks together so that I can easily flip between my calendar and this. This one's sort of unnecessary, but it's pretty for now, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there. And that is both my planner evolution and a little kind of a mini plan with me for November. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you got some tips from it maybe on how you can DIY your own planner, or things to consider if you thought, hey, I can do that, which you totally can. It can be a little tedious to set up all the files and stuff, especially if you want to do a dated calendar, because you do have to make sure all your dates are correct. But once you get in the start of it, it's really not hard. It's absolutely doable. And if DIY isn't quite for you, but you like the looks of mine, you'll be able to find it in my Etsy shop. And I will put links down there. So thank you for watching. Once again, I am Jennifer Vanderbeek from scrapsoflife.com. You can find more about me at my blog, Scraps of Life. And make sure you subscribe, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks. Bye-bye.